All right, so today we are going to introduce the group project. I really like this group project. It's one that I've developed over several years now, and it has kind of molded and morphed over the years into what has become a very interesting and fun project, something that is going to help you learn the things that you need to learn, but also give you some insight on how you can be more successful in college at the same time. So getting right into it, the first thing you're going to do is go to Module 2, Week 4. All right, once you're here, you're going to see the instruction sheet, which is where you found me today. You're also going to see that there's an example of a final business proposal, and I will show you that at the end of this video. And then I have another video that kind of walks you through that proposal. You also have your week 13 smart book, so that does need to be completed. And then as a group, which the groups have already been released, so as a group, you need to complete and submit mini activity 2.0. And just as a reminder, though I will go through it in the video for that one, but this is one that you're going to work together to create, and each one of you need to submit it individually, and that takes the place of your signed contract. Okay, so just know that that is part of this week's work. Okay, so let's get right into it and let's look at this instruction sheet and kind of just walk through what is this business proposal all about. So, whenever you're doing a business proposal, really the idea here is that the business has some kind of a problem, whatever the problem is. And the proposal is that you are proposing a solution to that problem. So, in order to do that, you have to very clearly define what that problem is and define any barriers to being able to successfully find a solution to that problem. Then you're actually going to give the solution and any additional information that goes with that solution. So, in the case of this particular proposal, you're going to do a cost analysis and an implementation plan, and then you're going to give me a conclusion. Now, it's important that you know going into it who your audience is. We have, anytime we do anything, we have a primary and a secondary audience. Our primary audience is who we intend to very specifically talk to, right? So if we're talking to, let's say we are working as a group, we're working as a team, and we're telling our team members something, then our primary audience is that team. A secondary audience, though, is anyone else who might see those messages for whatever reason. So perhaps you at some point need to email me about a question your team is having, and it's easier for you to forward me the chain of emails that very clearly explain the issue. Well, now I become a secondary audience. It's not who those initial emails were intended for, but I get to see them eventually because someone had a question, need to refer back to them. That makes me a secondary audience, not necessarily who it was originally intended for, but is someone who is going to see and particularly read it. Okay. So, as you're writing a business proposal, you want to keep that in mind as well. Not only are you writing the proposal in order to get whoever to approve your proposal, but then you also have to keep in mind the secondary audience, which is going to be any financials, any outside vendors that may have to be a part of it. They're going to be part of who's going to see that proposal as well and need to be able to clearly understand and read through everything that you have in order to do their portion of it. Okay. So, in what is this particular group project about? So, I'm just going to read this off to you on the screen here, and then we can discuss it. So, Fort Wayne or PFW would like to improve student retention and success on campus. It is believed that students who are more involved in school activities, clubs, sports programs, and other school related events are more successful. However, despite past efforts, participation levels remain low. Many activities, clubs, and programs have come and gone, and challenges in communication with students make it difficult for them to know what is available. So this is kind of the problem, right? So there's an understanding, and no one is providing any proof. There's just a general understanding that um, being active in outside activities like sports and clubs, right? So school activities helps you to be a more successful student. So, in order to start this, you actually have to prove that fact first. All right. And there are tons of different research available out there that talk about the relationship between students who are more involved in school clubs and activities and their success and retention rate. And so you just need to pull in some of that evidence to prove it first in your first part, which is going to be the current situation portion. All right. And then once you have that understanding and you figured that out, then you want to come up with some kind of a solution. How are you actually going to get students more involved in order to increase their particular success in school and the retention rate of students overall? All right, so let's go over this a little more. So your group is tasked with researching the current state of the student involvement here at PFW and to create a business proposal that outlines one innovative idea that is going to increase that participation. Now, I'll give you a clue right now. Creating a new club is absolutely not the right answer. Okay, we already have lots of different clubs, and then creating a new one does not solve the overall problem. So go ahead and take that one out of your brain. Okay, I promise there are other solutions that are much more effective than that. All right, so the assignment details, you have your groups formed. I sent those out earlier. And so what you want to do is you want to go ahead and start looking at what all is going to be expected for the end of this project. So you are going to have a business proposal report. So this is a professionally formatted written report that addresses the problem, the solutions, and goes through that and gives us that reference page and conclusion. Sorry. Additionally, you're going to need a PowerPoint presentation, and then you will also need a Zoom recording of your group doing the presenting your findings. Okay, you're going to use that PowerPoint as part of the Zoom recording, but you will submit both of those separate. So there are 3 submissions for the final portion of this: the report itself, the PowerPoint presentation I will grade separately, and then the recording will also be graded separately. Please note on the recording that all of your faces must be on screen the entire time. You can't record separately. Okay, that's part of learning how to work as a group. You've got to schedule when you're going to record your Zoom and make sure everyone is available. Okay, you'll also need to make sure that you understand how to use Zoom ahead of time. So talk amongst yourselves in the very beginning, find out who already is comfortable with Zoom. And if you're not comfortable with Zoom, take the time to come and create a meeting with me, and I'll walk you through everything you need to know to be able to create your own Zoom meeting. Okay. All right. So the goal of this project is to present one actionable idea that is going to improve students' involvement on campus with a clear implementation plan, cost estimates, and justification based on research. Like, that is a huge component. You have to be able to justify. You can't just randomly be like, oh, I think we should have a headphone party and that'll get everybody excited. You have to justify to me that that headphone party is going to be successful, and how exactly are you going to implement it? How much is it going to cost? And how is it actually going to lead to long-term success, long-term involvement of students in the current clubs and activities that already exist? Okay, so that's the connections that you have to be able to make. Okay. All right, so let's look a little bit more into the requirements. All right, there are different sections to this report. The first one is the current situation. This is where you're going to give me the justification that student participation does, in fact, correlate directly to student success and student retention in the university level. You're going to explain why improving these numbers is important for retention and success. All right. And just overall describe what the current state of PFW is in their student participation. And a lot of those numbers are available online. Student Life is also in charge of student participation. And so you could reach out there and do an interview in order to get some additional information. Next up is the specific objectives section. In this section, you're going to discuss basically what you're trying to accomplish, right? What is your objective? What do you actually want to have happen? And here's where you're going to give me SMART goals, right? So what is your SMART goals for this particular action? All right. How are you going to measure success? What is the timeline that you expect success? Those kind of things. All right, number 3, the next section is your actual idea. So this is going to be the bulk of your proposal, because in this section, you have your explanation of what the idea is. You're going to just talk about all the details of it first. You're going to talk about what barriers it overcomes. Then you're going to get into that step-by-step implementation and really explaining to me from the very beginning, from the start of the process until the very end that it's working, what all needs to happen. Who do you need to hire? What do you need to buy? What's the timeline that it's going to take to get it set up? What all is involved? Every single step needs to be in that process, okay? Then the next section is your cost estimate. And here we want an analysis, right? What is it going to cost? What is the overall expense that is expected to occur because of this? And you need to break it down, itemize it into individual ideas. Obviously, a lot of this is going to be estimated, but try to find some of those costs online so you have a more accurate estimation, and just do the research to have all the backup on that. Okay. Throughout that whole section, not a paragraph on its own at the end, but throughout the entire section, you want to incorporate research-based justification, right? So here again, if you're looking at a cost, show me where that cost is similar somewhere else. That's the research-based justification there. If you are talking about the implementation plan, show me where it makes sense that that's the steps that you need to take. As you talk about the idea itself in the very beginning, feel free to find something that's very similar that has been successful at another school, and give me that as a reference to justify why you believe it's going to work here. All right, so in this PowerPoint, and I'm not going to go through all of this word by word. You can read it on your own, but in here you can see this goes through everything that is expected in each section, right? So in your current situations, this is a really good guide to help you make sure you've got enough going on, okay? So you want to define the problem very, very clearly, right? Explain what the issue is. The issue, guys, is that student participation at PFW is low, and because participation is low, it's believed that that's the reason that there is lower student success and lower student retention all the way through graduation date. That's the problem. What we're trying to do is we're trying to prove that their participation in activities is going to increase their success and increase graduation rates. And that's where you need that research in order to prove that, okay? And you want to make sure that you're including 3 to 4 sources, really helping to solidify that proof. In-text citations are required, okay? You want to explain why students are not participating. This is those barriers I was talking about, right? So one of the most common barriers people say is, oh, I'm too busy. But let me tell you what, if you were guaranteed an A in every single class, you would make time, which means you're not actually too busy, right? You just don't see the value. And so, how do we help students to get past that barrier and find the value to be willing to put forth the effort? That is the question at hand. Okay. Now, again, you want to support your explanation of those barriers with research-based data. Integrate visual aids. You must have a minimum of 2 visual aids for the report as a whole. This is actually a really good area that a visual aid can go, depending on what research you find. Okay. Visual aids can be placed using charts, graphs, tables, anything like that. If you do use an image of a different graph or chart or table or anything like that, you need to make sure you're actually using and talking about everything that's in that chart. If you're just talking about a very small portion of it, you need to create a new chart that has that particular data in it. And of course, with everything, you do want to make sure that you are writing in a professional and academic tone, okay? Every once in a while, because we do this activity based on mini activities and building off those mini activities, sometimes students will refer to the mini activity as part of the business proposal, but you have to go back and remember what is that primary and what is that secondary audience, because neither one of those are ever going to know what those mini activities are. So I should never see any reference to the mini activity. If there's something in those mini activities that you want to reference, you just need to reference that exact content instead of the mini activity itself. All right, in your specific objectives, here you are going to state the goal of the proposal. You want to make sure that you write it very clear and concise statement that explains the overall purpose of this business proposal. Connect the barriers and identify the current situation. Okay, so we're making that connection between what the problem is and the barriers that students feel are stopping them from participating, so that when we get to that solution, we can base the solution specifically off the barriers in order to get them to overcome the barriers in order to solve the problem. Okay. Introduce your idea and discuss briefly those barriers, how those barriers will overcome, how those barriers will become overcome. Goodness, I am tongue tied. I apologize. All right, so here it's really just 2 to 3 sentences because we're going to explain it in way more detail in the section below, but you're just giving me a really quick glimpse of what your idea is and how it's going to overcome the barriers. Okay. Write in purposeful language. So, what does that mean? That means avoid vague language. Like, objectives should be measurable and actionable, not just say we want to increase student engagement. Well, that doesn't tell me anything, right? How are you going to measure student engagement? How are you going to measure improvement? How are you going to prove that this particular solution is actionable? Use words like increase, improve, encourage, enhance, reduce barriers, strengthen student success, right? So something that's much more specific and not just vague. Okay. In this particular section, there should be absolutely no new data. You want to only use the information from the section above and a brief introduction of the solution below, but no new research. All right, then you've got your idea one. So this idea one is your main heading, and then you're going to have 2 subheadings in this section. Those 2 subheadings are your implementation plan and your cost analysis. Okay, so this is going to have a heading and 2 subheadings. So under your idea one, you're going to first give me a very clear, full description of what the idea is so that I understand it before we ever get into the implementation. Because if you first start with, we're going to hire someone to sit at a desk and send emails out all day, whatever, right? That doesn't tell me what's going on. I need to understand what is happening first before we can get into the evidence, implementation, and cost analysis. Okay. So just give me a good introduction. You want proven evidence of success. So basically, what this means is you want to find something that is similar or kind of adjacent to what you are trying to propose that someone else has already done and been successful with. And you want to reference that to prove that this idea is worth implementing because there is a higher chance of success because it's already been successful other places or something similar to it. It doesn't have to be exact, but it does need to be similar. Here you should have at least 2 credible resources or references, okay? Then your next section or your subheading is going to be implementation plan. And this is literally step by step exactly how will this be done. And you need to really dive deep here. You need to think about what actually has to happen behind the scenes in order to get it to happen, right? So earlier we used the idea of a headphone party, right? Something obscure. But that headphone party, it's not just that you decide to have a headphone party and everybody just shows up, right? There's a lot of things that have to happen in the background. First, where do you get the headphones from? What space are you going to use? Who's going to be in charge? How are you going to find volunteers? Are you having beverages? Are you having snacks? Do those things need to be provided by an outside company, or are you making them in your team of people? And if you're making them in your team of people, do you have to have any kind of licenses or permits in order to have food? Then you need to go even further and you need to think about, okay, where are we getting the headphones? How are they getting delivered? Who has to be here to receive them when they get delivered? How early do we need to deliver them? That's the timeline aspect, right? What do they need? What condition do they have to be in when we return them? What timeline do they have to be returned in? Do we have to have a professional that runs the DJ in order to make this happen? Right? Like there are so many details, and you need to think through every one of those details and make that part of your implementation plan. Make sure you have a clear timeline. I should be able to see that we are starting this process on, I don't know, April 2nd, and we are implementing and the plan is ready to take action and have people, students actually involved by I don't know, April 20th, right? Whatever the case may be. But I want a very clear timeline. It shows me what all is happening within that timeline in order to start and then get ready for students to actually participate. Okay. All right. Then you need a cost analysis. So every single one of those little tiny details are typically going to have some type of cost associated with them, even if the cost is just that you have someone in charge and that person in charge has a salary, right? So every little detail needs to make sure that it is accounted for in the cost analysis. If you find that there is something in the cost analysis that is not part of the implementation plan, you need to go back and update your implementation plan. Vice versa, if there's something in your implementation plan that's not accounted for in your cost analysis, you need to make sure that they match. So if you have two different people working on these two sections, you need to make sure that those two people can coordinate and look at those each other's sections and accommodate. Okay. As usual, professional writing and detailed writing. This is going to be a very detailed section. Last but not least, we will have the conclusion as far as the writing itself goes. Here, you're going to connect ideas. You're going to go back to the problem, restate that original problem is how you're going to start your conclusion. You're going to summarize how the proposed idea is directly addressing that problem and overcoming the barriers. You're going to restate any statistical data, especially anything that helps you to measure success, and then explain why it is a strong choice for solving that problem. Okay, restate any evidence that really presses home the importance of why this is going to work, because you have to remember you have 7 other people that are proposing different ideas, and you want your idea to be chosen. Okay. Then you're going to reinforce your goals. So, what was the goal originally? And then state how this is going to make that goal happen. Okay. Again, in this section, you do not introduce any new data, but you do restate data that you've already used up above. After your conclusion, you will have an APA formatted resource page, and you need to make sure everything is on your resource page, and all items in your resource page have in-text citations throughout the wherever the information is found throughout the business proposal. All right, let me know if you do have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer those. A couple last things here. We do have, like I said, that conclusion where we summarize the report just by reiterating, restating statistics that are important and reinforcing any measurable criteria. And then, of course, keep in mind that primary and secondary audience, right? Primary audience in this case is student life. Your secondary audience, though, is going to be things like the dean of students and financial institutions. And then finally, we do have that reference page, a bare minimum of 6 resources. But if you only have 6, you're going to struggle. Okay. You're going to need quite a few resources in order to make this a successful proposal. And in some cases, the school may even choose to implement your proposal. So these will be passed on. All right, research requirements. You do need to make sure that you are gathering references, and there will be a few articles that I'll post that will kind of get you started, but you'll need to find additional resources outside of that, especially as you get into your specific idea. You are more than welcome to do interviews or surveys, but you need to make sure that you do them early so you have enough time to coordinate when to schedule those interviews or time for people to return the surveys. Okay. Additional guidelines. Your formatting, use professional tone and structure in your report, including headings, subheadings, and bullet points for clarity. The length of the proposal should be approximately 4 to 7 pages, and then your reference page would be additional to that. Citations need to follow APA formatting for both in-text citation and your reference page. All group members must contribute to all parts of this paper. So you can't just divide it out into different sections and then each one do one thing. You will need to collaborate throughout the entire project. You'll see we will split this project into mini activities so that we're just doing a small portion at a time so that I can help you work through each section. And then when you do your submission, you will highlight the portion that you worked on and or give me basically a short paragraph blurb about how you actually participated in this particular project or in that particular assignment. And that's how we're going to do the grading for this proposal. Now, with that in mind, it is very important that you understand that all portions of the business proposal have to be completed, whether all team members participate or not. However, you will not be penalized for a certain person not participating. Okay. This is just going to help us make sure that whoever doesn't participate doesn't get a grade. All right. The proposal still has to be completed in its entirety. And that's the way it is in the real world too, right? If you are put with somebody else in a group project or a team project and they don't do anything, the project still has to get done. And this is no different. Okay. All right, visuals. You are required to have a minimum of 2 visuals. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Can be graphs, charts, tables. You can use images, but I strongly encourage you to create your own. When you use outside images, there's typically a lot of information there that you're not actually talking about or using in your proposal, and that makes the image not usable. So you're better off just to create your own chart, graph, or table that has exactly the data in it that you are specifically talking about. All right, here is the grading criteria and the way that's going to be divided out. You can look that on your own. Last but not least, if you do have any questions, guys, always you can reach out to me, send me an email. Make sure you do CCRTA on that. And we will get back to you as quickly as possible. My cell phone number is available on the syllabus. So if you need an immediate response or you have something a little bit longer that you really want me to try to find the time to go in and look at that email right away, you can email me, let me know that that's going on, and I will do my very best to get to you as quickly as I can. Okay? All right, guys. Well, I'm excited. Don't be overwhelmed by this project because it really is a lot of fun and we do take it step by step. I divide this into several mini activities where we do just one portion at a time, which helps you to develop each one of those sections a little bit more thoroughly. The biggest part is really starting to think about what do you think is going to be a good solution to getting people more involved. The more thought you can put into that early, the more research you can do early on that is going to help you when it comes time to actually complete that section. All right. Well, that is all that I have for you on this particular video. In the next video, we will be going over this example of the informal or the formal business report that I had another group do in the past, and I'll just walk you through it. So you can see that in the next video. Thanks, guys. Bye.